All right, Shawn, man, super grateful to have you here with us today, brother. Why don't you start by giving us just a background, kind of your story, what you got into, how you got into it, and what you're doing.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Shawn Villalovos, and my background is I started in financial services 23 years ago. Prior to that, I grew up in a family that knew nothing about money. I have no college degree, barely made it through high school. Everyone in my family is blue collar. I'm the first guy to not do blue collar work in my family, and grew up in a family that you could call generous, if you were being generous, lower middle class. But we always struggled. My parents split up when I was 2 or 3, and so I lived with my mom. She remarried, had a couple kids, divorced that guy,
Man,
and
same
so
story, brother.
no way.
Same story. Yeah. Wow. Early on divorces, we were broke my whole childhood. Stepdads came and went. That's fascinating. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, she married a second time. That guy was fantastic. That was second half of high school for me. They got married, totally was changing her life, quit smoking, quit drinking, and they were on this great path. And then on my 18th birthday, he got shot. And so that messed that one up. He didn't die, but he got shot and it changed everything. Started drinking again. That got bad. And they ended up getting divorced. It's just crazy. And all of it was wrapped around, I mean, mostly finances, right? When you grow up without money and you grow up in an environment like that, you see the effect. Everyone says money can't buy happiness, but I see lack of money affecting people more negatively than
Okay.
any other thing.
Yep.
So having it, knowing what to do with it, more importantly, it makes a big difference in people's lives. And so when I came across my financial business at 22 years old, I saw a place that was educating people on fundamentals that could be taught in middle school. And so I thought, well, at the very least, I'm going to learn this financial stuff and be able to get my own life on track financially, maybe make some better decisions at a younger age, help people in my family with that stuff, and got excited about that. And that's what I pursued. So I started doing that from basically being a laborer my whole life up until that point. And my dad was a contractor. One of my stepdads was a contractor. I was around construction my whole life, thought I'd be more in that kind of industry, and got in financial services, knew nothing. And as I started, really struggled because I wasn't good at really anything that you need to be good at to do financial services, but especially talking to people, which is funny because it's what I do for most of my day now is talk to
Right.
people. But I wasn't good at carrying conversation. I'm an introvert. I will not, to this day, I still won't go to marketing events or like mixers where you're supposed to
Networking.
go, networking events, things like that.
No
I
way.
can't. If I get talked into one somehow, I'll just sit off to the side and meet a person and work my hardest to just talk to that one person the entire time so I don't have to go meet anybody else.
Love it.
So no natural tendencies to do really well in sales or anything that has to do with speaking to people. And so I had to learn and get good at that. Uh, but I struggled in the beginning. I lived in my car for 5 or 6 months. I was homeless. I was meeting with a guy earlier today, and it was funny because he has storage units and he owns, I think, 4 locations now of storage facilities. And as I was talking to him, I remembered that during that time, I had all my stuff in storage because the reason I was homeless is because I got rid of everything. I moved out of the place I was renting from. I tried to move back in with my mom, and that didn't work. It worked for like a month, and then I moved out and put everything in storage. But I remember when I put it in storage, I thought, you know what? I'll just sleep in my car to save money, and I'll put my bed in here. I got a bigger storage unit than I needed just so I could lay my bed down in there
Yep.
just in case. And I forgot all about that part until I was talking to the guy this morning, and it reminded me. I remembered that while I was sleeping in my car and was homeless during that time, there was a bunch of nights that I went to that storage unit and just laid the bed down, fell asleep, and spent the night in that storage unit during that time.
Man, the
But
parallels to our story is amazing. I slept in my I left home at 16 because of broken family, and there was a lot of times I slept in an old pickup truck I had, and I
Wow.
was gonna
That's
stay.
so, that is crazy. How
And I was,
random.
dude, I was so shy and so timid. I couldn't talk to people. And same as you, this is what I do. I talk to people all day, every day now. And so I'm curious, how did you like overcome those barriers? You get into this industry where it requires all kinds of personal and professional development stuff. How'd you get over that? Because a lot of people bump against it and then back away.
It was wanting it bad enough. It's the only thing I can attribute it to. It was having a big why, which for me was my mom wanting to give back to everything she did for us and watching her struggle. She was struggling pretty badly when I started my business. And she was the most negative for me starting the business because I was leaving a steady paycheck and getting
What are you
into
doing?
something that was no salary, was only commission based, where I had to get licensed. And back then it took the average person 10 months to get all the licenses you needed to make any money. And so I went almost a year and a half of making nothing. And she literally thought they were stealing my clients and taking advantage of me and lying to me. And I was never going to get paid. And she just thought I was totally out of my mind. And so I had, with no support from her, but she was the one I was doing it for. And
That's
it
incredible.
it drove me it to the point where I had to stay away from her and not listen to her and a bunch of other people, but just stayed focused on, and fortunately had good mentorship and good people that I trusted and believed in. And ironically, at the same time, there was a lot of people in our business and in the company that were pretty shady, actually. And I think that's why part of why my mom was so negative is because there was a guy in the company that she knew of that was really shady, who is actually in jail now. And I used to try and tell her, like, the business itself has nothing to do with that guy. He just happens to do the same business.
Right.
So I'm not that. I'm going to do it different. Actually, it's been good for me because I know what not to do. But she never heard that. She just knew of that guy and attached it to
To
what
the
I was
whole
doing.
industry, exactly.
Yeah. And so that made it more difficult. But because I also didn't have another alternative, I mean, what was I going to do? Go back to working 70, 80 hours a week to take home a few grand a month and never be able to help her financially? Because that was my other option. I had no other alternative to put me in a position where forget about even retiring her, which I did do, but I couldn't even help her in any way financially if I kept doing what I was doing.
Yep.
So because I didn't have an alternative, and this was something that the upside potential was so large, I was just so driven to somehow make it happen. And through that process, it made me willing to be uncomfortable. It made me willing to push myself beyond my levels of skill set and be hypercritical, I guess you could say, of myself and what I was doing, but also to monitor it. So I would record myself. I would literally have like a little recorder. I'd record myself in appointments and listen to how terrible I was. And I couldn't, to this day, when this comes out, wherever it comes out, I'll listen to it and I'll hate it. I'll say that was stupid. I said that word too many times. I said this filler word. I did that.
Right.
My tonality was awful. My whatever it is, I'm super hypercritical, but it made me better. And what happened was I started getting results anyways. And then that just helped my belief of, well, if I'm this bad and people are still giving me their
Still
money.
getting results.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it wasn't instant results, but it was enough.
Right.
I think it also helped that I grew up, my sport of choice was baseball. And in baseball, if you bat 300, you end up in the Hall of Fame. So you're failing 70% of the time and you can still be a Hall of Famer. So business is like that. You're failing most of the time.
Oh, so good.
And I was okay with that. And I just figured, hey, if I can at least be 10%, 20%, but still enjoying the process, still feeling like I'm making a difference. And that's the thing. When I did get results, people were appreciative. I was helping people that our typical industry wasn't helping. And so they were excited about it. They were thankful. They were grateful. They wanted me to talk to everyone they knew. And just I could do that one out of every 20 people, and it'd keep me energized through the 19 people that didn't want to do anything. So, and
Man,
then my numbers weren't that bad, but it was close.
right. And I don't know if we can emphasize that last point enough. Like, you can tell you were serving them. Like, there's meaning there. There was purpose. And when you show up and you're genuinely trying to help somebody, like, they're all in. They're like, yeah, here's my money and here's my list of friends. Like, that's a game changer.
You know, I hear this all the time too now from people, because they'll make an excuse before they even try sometimes.
Yep.
And I have people in my own business that say, man, it must be so easy for you to talk to people and convince them to do this because you're the proof. You're the proof that it works. I'm like, no, actually it's harder because they didn't see me 23 years ago. They only see me now.
Right.
And so they think it's easy. They think it's, and then they also use the excuse of, and you don't have to worry about making money. So it's easier to talk to people when you're not worried about the money.
Because there's no risk.
Yeah. But I have to remind them, no, when I was sleeping in my car, I wasn't worried about the money either. And that was the difference. I think that's why I've done well.
Yes.
When I knew I could do it without making money and still feel good about it, that's when it was game over for me. It wasn't when I started making the money. It wasn't when I hit 6 figures for the first time or 7 figures for the first time or whatever it was. When I became financially independent, it didn't get easier. It got easier when I got passionate about serving people and making a difference in their lives, regardless of the money.
Huge.
And then the money came along with that.
Right. The money's just kind of a symptom, a side effect of a passionate purpose, a noble target, right?
Yeah, it was a byproduct. And that focus on self-improvement. I tell people all the time that when they get in business with us, at the very least, you're going to be part of one of the best self-improvement programs you've ever been a part of. We just happen to have this massive compensation program attached to it, which if you come in with the right intention, you can get the best of both worlds. And it's worked for me fantastic. It's almost like we've monetized nonprofit work.
Oh, this is awesome. And again, similar to my journey where I was so desperate out on my own. I was voracious. I had to find the answers. So I started reading like crazy and inadvertently got led into personal development. I'm like, okay, I could see clearly. And I think you're saying the same thing. Is like, I'm only limited here by my own limitations. And if I chase through and break through those things, like it's going to change the whole outcome.
Well, you mentioned reading, and that was the key for me because I didn't read, we're not reading Harry Potter and stuff like that. Not that Harry Potter's bad, but I can't tell you the last time I read a fiction book. And that was my favorite growing up. I was always a reader, but I read fantasy, the Tolkien books and, you know, a lot of fantasy and stuff like that. I just loved, I think because it kind of pulled me out of what was actually happening in my real life. And so I got super into that, but then I stopped reading after high school. I didn't read, which most people don't read a book out of high school. I think if you read a book a year out of high school, it puts you in like the top 1 or 2% in the country, which is crazy. Yeah, it's mind blowing.
It's insane. So and I'm not boasting here, but just we can connect. I've averaged a book a week for over the last 2 decades. I love reading. I'm constantly reading. So I'm with you. And personal development, professional development, biographies, autobiographies. I'm all over the place because there's so much to learn. And I love it.
Especially with Audible.
Yeah, exactly.
You can drive around and listen to these. You know, it's funny. Before Audible, we used to, just by happenstance, in the first office I was in California, in the San Fernando Valley, this a town called Tarzana, there was this store, and it was a books on tape store. And it was not even a block, probably a half a block away from the first office I was in when I started this journey of personal development. And they just happened to have this books on tape store, and they just started coming out with some on CD. And so I had a CD and a tape player in my car, and it was a subscription, kind of like a Blockbuster Video,
Yeah.
but for books on tape.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I just started listening, because in our business, I had to drive around to do appointments all day, every day, and just spent 12, 13, 14 hours in my car all day and turned it into a library and would start listening. This is all pre-Audible.
Yep.
And so it was like, man, I got so much good information put into my brain. But in reading all these stories, what I started reading was not only personal development things, because really when you whittle it down, most of that are the same things they tell you. But what was also really powerful for me was reading autobiographies and listening to the stories of people that had done something in their lives, and starting to realize, number one, anybody who's done anything great with their life went through massive struggles along the way. And so it made the things I was going through, my quote unquote struggles, and the things that seemed difficult, not seem that bad. And then,
hey man, I remember reading a book and thinking like my problems are like Mickey Mouse problems. Like these people went through hell and back, like concentration camps or whatever. Yeah, you're spot on with that.
it's unreal. And you can pick anybody in any industry with any background, anybody you're interested in, and just read their background and story. And it's almost like the harder the struggle, the harder they would push to do something great with their lives.
Yep.
And so I just built up this mantra of nothing worth having comes easy.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we have this barn right now that I'm turning it into, I was calling it the man cave, but I was talking to a buddy the other day. He's like, that's not a cave, that's a cavern. The thing's huge.
It's huge.
But I got these big, giant, like 4 foot by 6 foot canvases with all these big sayings on it. And that's one of them.
Oh, so cool.
And, it's just, but that reading those stories built my belief and faith and everything also, because number one, I had this expectation that it was going to be hard. And number two, was able to compare my struggles with real struggles. And then it also made me think, as I was going through tough things, no matter how tough they seemed, it reminded me that, you know what, one day this is going to be a great story to tell. Exactly. Of overcoming. And so for whatever reason, I used to attach to some of those things as I was growing and building. But I think that's one of the things, as people get into personal development, that they tend to overlook. They just read the things that give them all the tips on how to succeed in their industry or their business. Yes. But then they still somehow think it's going to be easy. They haven't gotten themselves around people or ideas that emphasize the struggle.
The struggle. And where you operated from that expectation, it just sets you up to like, okay, yeah, okay. Because I think what happens is people are going along and they want it to be easy or expect it to be easy. So when it's hard, the impact there is like, oh man, I guess this isn't meant to be. I'm not supposed to do this. I didn't think it was gonna be this hard.
Yeah, well, and everybody's looking for a sign, and they take those difficulties as the sign you're not supposed to do it. Where in reality, that's the sign you're supposed to.
Yes.
And being a Christian, my belief is that every difficulty that we're given from the adversary. And the greater we're trying to do something, the greater our impact is going to be for good, the harder he pushes against us. And so as those difficulties happen, that means we're on track. We're close to doing something great, that this was meant for us. Where most people, it's kind of the opposite. They're looking for the excuse to not have to work so hard. And so when things get tough, well, there's my sign. Yes. This is hard.
Oh, man, I just wrote that down in my notes. Like, difficulties are not your sign. That's another thing to go on a big canvas thing, is like, no, man, the difficulty is not your sign. The obstacle is, well, you know this, the obstacle is the way, the obstacle is the opportunity.
Yeah, it's for me, one of the most difficult things that happened to me was I would sweat a ton when I would do presentations. And I would, for like 6 or 7 years, I averaged 7 to 8 presentations a day, one-on-one with people, which in sales is a ridiculous amount pre-Zoom. when you had to drive around, and I'm driving around the LA
In
area,
person.
and I was based
Wow.
in the San Fernando Valley in LA, so like northern LA County, and I was driving on a weekly basis down to San Diego at least once or twice a week, up to Bakersfield at least once or twice a week, and out to Indio once or twice a week, which, if you don't know, is a 2 to 3 hour run to each of those places from where I was based. And so every week I'm, like I said, in the car literally 12, 13, 14 hours a day, and then doing 7 to 8 appointments on top of that. And every appointment, and this was whether it was one-on-one or a group presentation, I would, to this day, I still have no idea if it was anxiety or what it was. I'd just start sweating.
Sweating like a
And
champ.
then as I started sweating, I would ruin shirts,
Yep.
completely ruin shirts. And no matter what shirt, I had to stop wearing shirts with color. So I couldn't wear, like the gray shirt you have on now, I couldn't wear that, because if it was a light gray, it'd be a dark gray, except for like a little strip of light gray up here,
Yep. Yep.
and maybe light gray up here, but dark gray everywhere else. And I just ruined shirts. So I couldn't wear anything with color in it. While I was sweating, all the heat would leave my hands, my feet, my ears, my nose. And so they'd be freezing cold. So at the end of every presentation, especially one-on-one presentations, I'd be leaving people's homes, and you got to shake their hand.
And it's just like this cold.
So gross. I felt so bad for those people every time it happened. And I could never come up with the thing to make that less embarrassing.
Right.
There was no joke I could come up with. There was nothing I could say that was going to make that not embarrassing. I just accepted that it was going to suck every time, and that I was going to be embarrassed 7, 8 times a day. And that lasted for about 5 or 6 years. And then just one day it went away.
Stopped.
Still to this day, inexplainable. No idea why it happened, because I wasn't not confident. It's not that I didn't believe in what I was saying. It's not that I didn't know what to say. It's not that I wasn't knowledgeable in my field. I had all of those things. It just, as I started every time, I became this sweaty mess.
Physiological response.
Yeah.
But what's awesome is you knew it was going to be embarrassing, and you got up the next morning and did it 7 or 8 times again.
Yeah. So if you could call that a struggle, like a real, I don't view that as real struggle, but for most people, they're just not willing to be embarrassed. And it was to the point where I just thought it was going to do that my entire life. I didn't know it was going to shut off after 5 or 6 years. I mean, most people wouldn't go 5 or 6 days.
Right.
It's kind of the point, but I just resolved to, oh, well, it's, if that's what it takes, and that's what it's going to take, and if that's what it's going to be like, I guess that's the price I have to pay.
Oh, that's awesome. And at what point in this journey did you get married and start a family?
We got married in 2002. So a few years in, I met my wife in our business.
Okay.
So we started separately in our company around the same time. I think I started 5 or 6 months before her, maybe 4 or 5, in that range. We started separately, doing our own thing. Both became brokers in our organization, running our own agencies, but we were young. We were both 22 when we started. And the youngest by far in the office we were in, we just happened to be in the same office, totally different teams, everything, but we happened to be in the same office. And because we were the youngest ones in there, they kind of naturally, we have a lot of friendly competition in our business, and they just kind of pitted us against each other with this friendly competition because we were the young ones. And I think, honestly, they probably didn't have much expectation for our long-term success, because most young people don't do it. And at least at that time in our company, there weren't many younger people that did it, especially financial services. You look at, I mean, it is an older industry, especially now. And it's even worse now than it was back then, but back then was still bad. And then we ended up literally passing up everyone there independently. And then we started dating, and real quickly after we started dating, got married. And We got married in '02, started our business in '99, got married in '02, and started having kids in '05. And yeah, it
So
was, but I went from, in 2000 is when I was sleeping in my car. My wife is actually the one who figured out I was sleeping in my car, and she was living with her mom at the time to save money. And she made me go sleep on the couch there. We weren't even dating yet.
whoa.
And I was sleeping on her mom's couch, and her mom likes to rescue animals. And so every day I'd wake up with these like pugs breathing in my face, on the couch in her house. And yeah, that was a crazy part of that story. But then we started dating, combined our businesses.
That's what I
And
was going to ask. Did you combine your business, and did you both keep up this kind of work schedule
oh
after
yeah.
marriage?
Yeah, even after having kids, because we, as independent contractors, we have a very family friendly environment. As a matter of fact, one of the things I tell anybody who wants to get in business with us is that we are and always will be a family focused company.
Fantastic.
So because of that culture, it's fine to bring kids around. So as we started having kids, our daughter was at the office all the time, had our second son a few years later. And when they were small, it was real easy. And then right after my son, right away, my wife wanted to have another one. So 18 months later, had our third baby. And then my wife got sick, and she got diagnosed with lupus. And then we were forced into cutting back, which was a blessing in disguise. In my wife's book, she actually talks about that, the process and that time of our lives, how sick she got. And what happened was, I mentioned how I was out driving around. I'd been doing that the entire time, even with our kids. I was out on the road all day, every day, doing those appointments and stuff. And if I had local appointments, then I'd drop in and I'd do stuff with the kids and whatever. We still made it work. But I was still wanted to make sure I was getting all those appointments done. When my wife got sick, I couldn't anymore because she was incapacitated. She literally couldn't get off the couch a bunch of days,
So
physically could
she
not
was
move her
out,
body.
just
Yeah.
down.
Because she had an autoimmune disease and her muscles wouldn't function. During that time, I was also, her cure to that was not to take the drugs that doctors want to give you. She just deep dove into healing herself between Western and Eastern medicine doctors, diet, a bunch of different things, and changed her diet. And the diet that she got on to heal her gut, which was going to open up a lot of the sensory issues causing her autoimmune stuff, it required 4 to 6 hours a day of food prep and cooking,
Wow.
which she couldn't do for herself.
That's what I was going
So
to say, which fell on you.
that fell on me, and all the kids stuff. And then the kids started getting into sports and ballet and that kind of stuff with my daughter as she started getting into more school and sports activities and other things. So I became kind of Mr. Mom. The thing my wife would do is she still made phone calls. So she could at least lift her arm
Still
like
on the
this
couch calling people. That is
and,
awesome.
and nonstop. She almost died on another story, another note. We had only had my daughter. She had a internal bleeding, something ruptured inside her, had internal bleeding, almost died, had emergency procedure. We were down in Laguna. That's a whole other story. And she's literally about to go into this emergency surgery, and she's telling me, make sure you call so-and-so and do this and follow up with this person and do that. I'm like, you're going like, how about you not die right now?
Right.
Please do that.
She's
Can we
like,
focus on that?
back through the list here for me.
Yeah. And after surgery, post surgery, she's like, where's my phone? And wants to get every
Whoa.
baby. She's in labor for, I think, every baby during labor in the hospital. She's just on the phone calling people, leaving messages. She's just a maniac that way. Her focus is
Amazing.
insane. But
What's her drive? Has she always been like that? Has she always just been driven, high achiever?
as long as I've known her,
Okay. So she's
growing
coming out of the
up,
world. She's going.
she in her book, she talks about that too, that when she was in Girl Scouts, she was ultra competitive, high achiever, want to be the best. Every job she's had was that way. And yeah, it's she's awesome.
That's
She's one of
cool.
the most remarkable people I've ever met in my life. And I know a lot of real high power people too in the self-development space and executives. And, we have friends that are billionaires, and I mean, some of those guys call her for insight on things. She's
That's awesome.
really remarkable.
So
It's
this is a
awesome.
perfect spot to jump in. How do you guys nourish your marriage and your relationship, raising families together, working together, being super high achievers, the two of you? I mean, it's if one of the couples in it, but both of you just going after it. What works for you guys to keep the marriage alive and strong?
It evolves. It's really changed over time. But the one common denominator in all of it through the last 20, man, what's it been now? 21 years almost of being together. 22 if you include dating. And the thing that's been consistent the entire time is being on the same page, knowing what we want, communicating that with each other, and being on board with what needs to happen to get that done. We've gotten really good at communication in a lot of different ways, where we're very good. We got very good early on setting goals. I think both of us got it from a combination of the mentoring and the coaching and the people that helped us in our business on the front end with the book Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, I love that.
And on page, I had the old one, whatever the old version was. For me, it was page 38 of Think and Grow Rich, which is where it had the outline of write down exactly what you want.
Mhm.
No, write down the date, that when you want it, how much you want to have. You need to be able to feel it and imagine yourself in possession of whatever it is. Just the whole steps. Write it down, read it out loud twice a day, all those things. And both of us got really good at that, and reevaluating it at least at minimum on a quarterly basis. So reevaluating those goals, long-term, midterm, short-term. We got really good early on in putting it into quadrants, which for us, it's faith, family, finances, and fitness.
Yep.
And on the fitness one, it's fitness/fun. And now with our happy and strong company, we all four of those things lead into fulfillment. So it's all F's. It's
Yep.
our favorite F words. Since we don't curse now, it's the only F
That's
words we
awesome.
use. So, which wasn't the case in my previous life before I started our business. But we would have those quadrants, and each of us would write down what we want to achieve, whatever the time frame was. Okay, for this quarter, what do we want to do in our faith? What are the goals there? What about our family stuff? What about finances, business? What are business goals we're trying to achieve? And then fitness wise, what do we want to do with our bodies? And each quadrant, write down what that was, and then we compare. And most of the time, they're almost totally in sync. We have the same goals. And then obviously for each of us, there's individual things in certain spots that we need to work on. But we've always done it that way. And then it's okay, now these are our goals. What do we need to do to get there? So what are our, I don't want to say roles going to be, but kind of what's our schedule going to need to look like to achieve that? And the only reason I don't say what are our roles is I think one of the mistakes couples make is that they assign roles to each other, and then they get mad when one or the other are not doing those things.
Keeping up with the expectations.
Yeah.
Yep.
And worse is having covert expectations, right? These covert contracts
Exactly. And not saying anything.
yeah, you have an expectation that you haven't voiced
Yep.
in the other person. They don't meet that, which is what most couples do. And forget about business. That's just what most couples do to each
Yep.
other
Exactly.
anyways. They don't communicate, and they really don't communicate expectations. And then they get mad because you're not meeting expectations that they didn't know you had of them in the first place.
Exactly.
But making the expectations of each other for certain things that are rigid are bad too. And so we never did that to each other.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, stuff's going to come up throughout the day. Here's your list. If you can get this, and this done, awesome. But if a couple days go by and it doesn't happen, then she would just do it, or I would just do it. Or, man, this happened with the kids and I got to run. I got to jump and do this now. I'm going to go do that. But because we're both high achievers, I think what's worked well for the both of us is neither one of us wants to sit around and wait for anybody. So we're just going to stay busy. So if we see stuff that needs to get done, we'll just go do it. And now we've evolved into, for me, that's become more on just household stuff, the kids, other things that are going to make things easier for her on running some of the business things and everything else, because she's so good at the calls. She's so organized. Her brain works so much faster than mine. She remembers things that I don't. I mean, 10 times a day, I'll walk out into my garage to get something or do something and forget why I was there,
Out there.
which she doesn't do. She's just on it. And so we stopped. And this was a challenge early on where she would kind of tally that and be like, I'm doing this. I did this many things. I got this many results. I called this many people. How many people did you call? And I'm like, well, you called 42 people and I called 4. But my conversations I was having were different.
Yeah.
Hers were like, boom, to the point, this, and mine were deeper dives. How you
So
doing? How's the family?
did
How's
it ever
that?
feel competitive like that as you guys were growing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It definitely did. And honestly, I struggled with the value I was bringing, but then I had to shift it to, okay, we have all these quadrants, and yeah, she's real heavy here, but I'm also doing this with the kids and that, and it doesn't, maybe it's not moving the needle in our business, but shoot, it's keeping the stuff in line with the family.
Yep.
Now, in saying that, I still 30 minutes of nurture, not even that, 10 minutes of nurture from her is worth more of, hours spent with me with our kids. So I'm still, as a man, not going to give the nurture that they need, that she does, but she never misses those opportunities. And
Fantastic.
so she can
And they have
still be working all day long and on her phone all the time. But she's still having meaningful conversation with our kids on a daily basis. She's
and
still
that has a magnifying power. It's
absolutely.
incredible. There's some kind of thing, and I can't explain it, but there's moments in a day like that, whether it's even your own stillness or reading something or engaging with someone or just feeling love for someone. Those moments have this magnifying power throughout the day in the relationship. That's huge.
And the thing is, when we're on the same page, it doesn't bother you when you understand what's happening.
Yep.
I see that with couples too, where we'll sit with the couple. This happens a lot in our business and now with our coaching company, where the instant thing that happens, they sit down. Well, they're working all the time. They're doing this. They can't get off their phone. Then you have to ask them, is that true? Can you not get off your phone? Yeah, it's pretty true. Okay, well, what do your date nights look like? When do you spend time with your kids? Well, I'm just so busy. I don't really. Okay, well, get your planner out right now. I'm assuming you use a planner, because especially high achievers, they plan most of their day.
Yep.
Okay, now what are the non-negotiables from you? And then you ask the other spouse, what are the non-negotiables? What do you wish they were at, or turn the phone off during? How often do you want it to be all the time? Because that's not reasonable. So there's kind of this give and take, right? The whole time they're home, they're not going to have their phone off. That's just not reasonable when you're running a business.
Yep.
But what time would you like it off? And usually it's only a couple hours. If you look through the whole week, well, during this, or when we're at this for the school, our family night, or whatever it is, maybe during dinner, if we could just turn off the phone for 20 minutes during dinner so we could have a conversation. whatever it is, it's usually not much. You say, okay, that's reasonable, right? Yeah. Okay. Now write it in your planner. So now you have no excuse. You can't
Schedule it.
plan
Make it
another
happen.
meeting on top of a meeting that you already have and treat it like one of your meetings.
Yep.
And just make that your habit. And man, you're going to be amazed at how much better life gets. And now when you are at the restaurant and you're on your phone, you already have an agreement that that's going to be okay because you're off the phone in these other non-negotiable times. But, and then that spouse is, maybe it does make them mad, but they're going to have to remind themselves, okay, that's our agreement. And this is for the betterment of our family. This is going to increase our business. This is helping us achieve our goals. This is going to help us do the things that we want. This is going to pay for that vacation, whatever you attach it to. And now, as you have those angry feelings, because you're on the same page, you can say, all right, it's no big deal. And now if the kids complain about it, which is going to happen too, then you can have their back instead of being like, yeah, you're right, they shouldn't be on the phone. That's, your dad just sometimes cares more about his business than he does about you. Well, how does that serve your family?
Ooh, that just
And when you
undoes
undermine
everything
each
right
other,
there. Yep.
which too many couples do.
Yep.
And so instead if that happens with our kids, they know better now, because they know if they come at either one of us about the other one, and if it's being on the phone or whatever, they're going to get hit hard with
support.
Yeah. Well, and in a way, like one of the examples is we had a party that we were having at the house, and we were inviting a bunch of people in our business over, and we were turning it into kind of like just a retreat for our top performers in our business. And we were having like, I don't know, 70 or 80 people come over to the house, and it was going to be a fun time. We were telling the kids, oh, we got the team coming over, and they're like, the team's coming over again. And this was my daughter, and we were like, yeah, the team's coming over. Why, you have a problem with that? Oh, I was hoping it was just going to be us and the family. It'd be like, look, what did you want to do with the family? Well, I wanted to swim. I want to do this. I want to go on the hike, and I want to do that. And we were like, all those things you just said you want to do, you know why we're able to do those things with you? Because of the team, because of our business, because of the efforts that these people have put in, are why you have this magnificent swimming pool and these water slides and the things you get to enjoy with us as a family on a regular basis. And we're just asking that you share that with the people who made that possible for you. We don't think that's a hard thing to ask. So don't forget that all of these people are an intricate part of the things that you get to enjoy on a regular basis. And we're never going to not share that with them. We're never going to not share our success and the things we enjoy with them. And so if you're inconvenienced for a day, it's not a big deal, because you get a lifetime of enjoying the things that they've helped provide.
Yep.
And
another great example of that open communication.
Exactly. And they also know that through the entire process of our business, we're also serving and helping families.
Yep.
So we remind them of that too. Remember, these people qualified to be here. They did extra so that they could enjoy themselves at our home, but they had to go and help a bunch of families to be able to do that. And so these are people who really care. And it's, I don't want to say we pour guilt on them, but it's not guilt, it's understanding.
Right. It's perspective. Exactly.
It's perspective. And then they're on board. It's like, yeah, they need reminders, but we all need reminders.
Yep.
And that's been a significant advantage, if you want to call it that, to working together. But like, I talk to people all the time. They're like, how do you guys do it? You're together all day, every day. I couldn't do that with my husband. I couldn't do that with my wife. And we all could do it if it's important, and as long as you communicate.
Yep.
And I think that's the key.
Exactly. Be on board. A couple of questions come to mind. What do you guys outsource? Because you can't do it all, especially where both of you are working, both of you are high achievers. You got so much going on. What works for you guys in outsourcing?
We do people. So that's That's how I say it. We do people. We outsource everything else. Paperwork, operations, anything, and anything that involves people, that's what we do. So for me on the business end, I'm not doing day-to-day operations most of the time. I'll do it with clients who need help with things they call. But when they call me, I tell them my assistant's going to call you back with the information. We'll get it, as long as it takes. And then for some of the clients, they want to talk to me, so I'll talk to them. So that gets outsourced for, and then I'm having leadership conversations with people in our business. So I tend to get into the longer in-depth things, how things going, is there anything I can help you with? What's the next goal? When are you going to hit it by? That kind of, my wife does a lot of that stuff too, but she also does a lot of like day-to-day follow-up type things in our business. Events coming up on the horizon, agendas, planning. She's a planner. She actually loves, we will go to Fiji and I will be like, it's a dream destination for me. Because I surf and all I want to do is surf all day long. You give her a couple notepads and stick her in a lounge chair overlooking the ocean and she's in heaven just planning her next thing.
Yep. That's how my wife is too, man.
Which I think is crazy. And she thinks I'm crazy for just wanting to go surf.
Yep.
But it works and we know that. But if she does that, but she does no paperwork. I don't know if either one of us knows how to do any paperwork. Like right now, if you told me to pull up to get somebody started with me in my business, which I do almost every day with people, I couldn't tell you where I need to go right now. I'm sure I could figure it out, but I couldn't tell you exactly right now where I'd have to pull it up on the website, where I'd have to go, what I'd have to push, and what I'd have to enter to get somebody onboarded with us. Because every time that goes to my assistant. So I do zero paperwork, zero stuff. I'm only doing people stuff.
And how soon into building your business did you start outsourcing things? Because I know this is a point of conflict for a lot of people.
That's a good
business
question.
owners, a lot of entrepreneurs. They're like, at what point do I start outsourcing? Because you get to the spot where you feel like you can't afford it, but you can't afford not to.
Yeah, that was at the point when we were just getting into a position to not worry about paying bills. and to that point, we had become experts in all the operation stuff. So, and this is also when you're involving securities licenses. So we were doing the supervisory stuff with our securities licenses as well. So we were actually branch supervisors and branch managers of our own office and branch, which entails a whole other layer of compliance and paperwork and quarterly interviews. And back then there was even monthly interviews we had to do with all our reps and everything. And
wow.
And we were growing at significant agencies. So that was turning into hundreds of people, now it's thousands and which is why we outsource it. But we were doing all of it. And then when we got to where we weren't worried about paying bills anymore, and I shouldn't say anymore, because maybe in the very back of our minds, it was still there. So it wasn't totally comfortable to bring on staff, but we started with someone part-time that was also they were in our business or their spouse was in our business. So they were still attached to the business.
So there was
in
a
some
connection.
way.
That's awesome.
And they cared. So it wasn't just some, minimum wage,
Yep. Just punching time
part-time person or whatever. Someone that could come in, that could care, that we still paid them minimum wage, basically, very little. But a lot of them liked it because they could be around the business and they could learn it faster. They could learn the operation stuff. They could get better at that. They could be closer to us and learn from just watching us run the business. And so that's how we started. And it was, I think we would pay them on like a salary for like 20 hours a week to start, give them like a SOP of Here's their expectations
Yep.
for those hours on a per week. You just, I don't care how you do it, get this, and this done every day, and you're
Which
good.
is an awesome way to have team members. You're
Yeah.
like, look, this is what's expected. This is what we need done. Go.
Yeah. And and then that just grew from there. Very quickly, we jumped into full time, and then as quick as we could. It didn't take more than a couple of years to get totally out of operations completely. And now even like we'll do events, and we found the dynamic where like my wife will plan the whole agenda, and she'll do the agenda, and she'll get the speaker, and she'll come up with kind of who's going to talk about what we're going to do. And then I focus on the recognition and the entertainment, because that's my wheelhouse, and I'll have fun with that. And we'll make it super fun, and we'll do a bunch of awards, and it's like we want people to leave just, not only did they learn a bunch, but they had an experience.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
so we wrap into that. I put a bunch of effort into that, but still, even with the entertainment and all that stuff, we put together teams now of, okay, you're in charge of this, and we're going to have, this dance routine. We're going to have this crew. We're going to have this company come in, and we're going to have this Cirque du Soleil thing. We're going to, whatever it is, we bring in all of that to achieve the result, but we put the effort into the feeling that our people are going to get.
Right. So building a culture. What about around the house? Just maybe some logistics. I know people are thinking like, because this comes up a lot with our audience. Like, what do you outsource around the home and the family, the house? Like, they're always curious of how to manage a household too when you got your hands on all kinds of things. You guys, the yard. How involved are the kids? Taking a house. How do you have people come clean? Do you shopping, all that stuff?
Yeah, in California, we had our gardeners, we had our landscapers. We were on like almost 8 acres in California, and needed it landscaped. So that was, I had guys doing that. We've always had housekeepers. At one point early on, we used to have nannies. We don't do nannies anymore. For a couple years when we needed it, we had a live-in nanny who was fantastic. And that dynamics kind of changed depending on our kids' needs. We've had kids in private schools, we've had them in public schools, we've had them one-on-one virtual learning. It just, all the kids are different too, and their needs and stuff like that. So it kind of ebbs and flows with what the family needs. But our main ones are, I think we'll always have a housekeeper, because I'm anti dishes, and I don't even make my bed. Right? Like,
I hate the dishes.
Who was it? McRaven? Was it McRaven's book, Make Your Bed?
Yeah.
I forget, one of those generals.
Yep. Yeah.
I was like, sorry, that's not me.
I got somebody else to take care of that. No, it's huge. And we've had the live-in nannies before too, and we've always had help. And it makes a difference. And you're right, it changes as the kids get older and change, like the dynamic changes. So you have to keep adjusting. But man, I think it's so important that the things that can be outsourced ought to be outsourced, so that you can focus on the things that matter most to us.
Yeah. And the same thing, we're not outsourcing nurture for our kids.
Right.
That's part of why we don't have a nanny anymore, or why we don't go that route, and we don't have people do those things. We don't have even people helping them with their schoolwork. I try and help them with that. But I will say this about our kids, knock on wood, they're all, even our 7-year-old, since he was 4 or 5, are completely independent, where part of it's just because we make them. We don't baby them. We're
all about autonomy, man.
Like, you figure it out. You get the homework done. It needs to be done. You don't turn it in. You're going to be, oh, it's so hard. Oh man, is it really hard? Well, then your teacher must have lied to me, because they told me it was going to be pretty simple. It'll only take you like 10 minutes. They're a liar. You know what? Don't do it. That's fine. I bet they'll give you extra time during recess tomorrow. And I'll call the teacher. I'll send them an email, and you just do it during recess tomorrow. Don't worry about doing that homework tonight. And they're
see
like,
how that goes over.
No, I'll do it. Right. But they're all super independent that way. But we also, we are careful not to let work get done for them in other ways too. So since we moved here, I have my boys doing the yard work now. We're on 10 acres here. and there's tons of grass, but I got a giant 0-turn lawnmower. And that was kind of like, that got my 14-year-old excited
Yeah,
actually.
that's a toy for a teenager boy.
And so I told him, like, hey, here's what it's going to cost for a landscaper for me to pay him, or you can do it, and I'll pay you $100 a week or whatever it is.
Yep.
And he's all pumped, really? And I'm like, yeah. And then you can use that for your mission, to save for a mission, and for your first car. Let's make that your two big goals that you save for. And then I'll match you dollar for dollar for everything you say.
Say, fantastic. We do that same thing. Like, hey, this is what I'd pay if you guys want. We do the fellow kids. Like, hey, we would pay this, and we're willing to. If nobody wants it, we'll pay somebody else. If you guys want the money, here it is, and
Yeah.
then start planning. Yeah.
Yep. So now my boys are my landscapers. My one boy does all the edging and leaf blowing and all that stuff. And when we need extra things done and edged and cut, he does all of that. And then the other one does just the mowing. And then they have their regular chores on top of that, obviously.
Yep.
Picking up stuff around the house. We don't have housekeepers here every day. They come a couple times a week, and the rest of the week is they do dishes. They,
Yep.
each meal. We do almost every dinner together.
Same.
Where we're together as a family, and then they all have they take turns. Okay, you're going to load, you're going to unload, you're going to clear the table. No, we don't have a cook. We tried that.
No. I mean, do you have them cook? Do you have your kids cook?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I do most of the cooking.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I enjoy it though. I like it. And that all started with my wife getting sick. When that all happened,
then you had to.
And I evolved into that, and I kind of stayed there.
Nice. You got to get beyond the mac and cheese at some point, or you're everyone's gonna hate.
I mean, everything we have is pretty much, everything's organic. Make a lot of stuff from scratch. Do a lot of really healthy meals, and
Same.
we've gotten really good at that. Again, at first from necessity, and now it's just our habit. So yeah,
that leads me to another thought. Like, how do you feel like success has? Do you feel like you've changed much as individuals, couple, of family, as you've grown in success?
Yeah, for sure we've changed, and too many people are unwilling to accept or say that. And the reason I'm willing to say and accept it is because that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it's so weird that I think it's weird that stops at some point in our lives. You look at most people, especially, I'll use kids as an analogy. You look at your kids, how excited do people get when their kid starts to walk?
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, until after you've had a few kids and you figure out that's when it gets hard. Then you're like, oh no, they're walking. But it's so, when they start trying to walk and they fall on their face, you're not like, well, that was stupid. Why are you trying to walk? Just stay sitting and crawling around. You get around well, crawling around, just keep doing that. We encourage them. We get excited. They start learning things at school. They start playing sports. They hit their first base hit in baseball. They get their first basket in bat. Man, you're awesome. Go do it. Try harder, work harder, do it more. And then at some point, usually in the middle school, high school realm, that changes.
It starts to level off, man.
Yeah, it starts to level off, and you say, yeah, no, you can't do that. That's going to be too hard. That's too much risk. Don't put yourself out there like that. Just get a steady job. Even our own parents do it. Our families do it. Culturally, we do it. We don't even realize it's happening. So we go from encouraging our growth and taking risk and trying new things to, no, it's got to be steady. You got to be the same. And then before we know it, 10, 20, 30, 40 years goes by, and we've got that Al Bundy thing going on where we're talking about how great high school was, because that's the last time we went for something.
Isn't that crazy? The way you're articulating that, you're right. We encourage it for so many years, and then it almost flips and we discourage it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, no, go, 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 go. Now, no, don't go. Don't slow down. Stop. Just stay where you are. Kind of get in a rut. And why are you trying to get out of the rut? Yeah. That's an excellent point.
Yep. And so we're supposed to change. And I've changed a ton, and I'll keep changing. I'm not going to, if I'm the same guy a year from now, smack me.
I say the same thing. You and I have no business being the same person next year that we are this year. Every year ought to find us green and growing.
Yeah. But I think I said it earlier, it's evolved. We as life hits us and different things become important, one thing we've gotten really good at is the evaluation, because we communicate so much to the point where literally every Sunday night's our family night. We do family council and we plan our week and what's going well, what's not, what do you guys have? Are there important things? And if things are getting hard in any way, we adjust. Okay, I'll do this more, I'll do this less, I'll put more effort here. If you need help with that, I'm here to support, whatever it is. And that's constantly changing.
Love it. Oh, that's fantastic, man. This has been so good. There's so many nuggets here and so many insights in your guys' story. Um, it, is there something that stands out? Kind of as one maybe last thought. Is there something that really stands out that you wish you had known sooner or done differently? Maybe done it sooner, done it better. Just kind of looking back over your journey, that maybe something there that people would be like, man, that would have made all the difference. Or maybe something you did do that made all the difference. One last piece for the men who are listening, like what's something that would have or did make a big difference for you?
I'll say, I think what did make, and I couldn't imagine our life without it, is real early on in our marriage, somebody explained our personality types to us so that we could understand each other and how we communicate, so that we wouldn't get mad at each other when we said certain things a certain way to each other.
Wow.
And that has been probably the most valuable thing in our marriage, is our understanding of each other and our personality types and the way we communicate. And without that piece, honestly, I don't know if we'd still be married. I think what happens is I know what happens to people is that, and this isn't just in couples, this is in business, this is in any relationship you're going to have with any person or any group of people, is that if someone the old term, treat people like you want to be treated.
Yep.
The golden rule.
Yep.
Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. That's not necessarily true, because number one, what if you're a masochist? That's not going to work well for most of the people you deal with. But it's an extreme example, but it's an example of the way I would tell somebody to do something compared to the way my wife would tell somebody to do something if I'm trying to get something done.
Totally different.
Totally different. I'd be way nicer about it.
Yep.
And she, in the pursuit of just trying to get it done, would be a little harsher, but they're more likely to get it done because of that. And so she's more effective in it, and she's not going to spend any time beating around the bush, trying to find an angle, trying to make it feel warmer or fuzzy or any of those things. She's just going to get it done. She's going to do it more often. She's going to get more done. But along the way, that could devastate the people who are close to her in her life if they don't understand that there's no ill intent in any of it. She's not trying to be mean. She's not telling you you're stupid because you didn't get it done yet or any of those things. But her tone might sound like that if she were you.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So what I hear you saying is like, don't treat people the way you want to be treated. Treat people the way they want to be treated, or you have to operate from that understanding of that individual, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I love that. And the same was true for us when I started to understand how my wife operates. Like I didn't expect her to operate like I operate.
Yeah.
So
and then you don't get mad. And here's the thing, you still naturally will get mad in the moment for a second when they speak to you a certain way, or vice versa. They may when you speak a certain way, but if they understand the meaning behind how you said it because of your personality, then that you won't stay there.
Exactly.
And you won't dwell on it. And then so that it doesn't become what I call the death of 1,000 cuts, which gets most couples. They just store in the memory bank. It's like, I read a book. I think it was the ABCs of building a business team that wins. It was a business book, but there was a term in there he called stamp collecting, where somebody does something that you didn't like.
Stacking.
Yeah, you stack it, you just collect that stamp. Oh man. And then when you get mad at them, that you did this and this and this and this. I mean, that gets most couples, right? It's not the one time, like all of a sudden you don't file for divorce because they got on your nerves. It's, you know, the 1,000 little things that you let bother you, that you dwelled on, and it became an issue. So because early on we understood each other, we don't live in that space of having this collection of things we've done wrong to each other in the past.
Yeah, it's huge. Jordan Peterson and some of his colleagues put together a personality test, and my wife and I did it. And it's just the spectrum of the big five, right? And on a couple of things, we are we are like literally opposite sides of the spectrum by massive differences. And you're right, it's just such an insight. You're like, oh, okay. And we'll bring it up now. We're going like, oh, that's why you're doing this, that's why I'm doing this. And we get each other. And so
Do you
man,
laugh about it too?
oh, totally. Yeah. And
Yeah,
you
we
have to,
laugh
right?
when we
could get
catch each
upset.
other in it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll just start cracking up.
Yeah. Yeah, we totally do. But it makes a big difference. That's a great insight, man. I did not see that one coming. That's a good thought, because early on, the sooner you do it, the sooner you understand the people you're close to and what makes them tick and why they do what they do. Man, it unlocks so much and prevents so many problems.
When you understand that, just think of how many couples or past couples that have been divorced, that have gotten divorced, that you know, that if they could have gotten to the root of that early, they would have never gotten to the point of separation or divorce or
Exactly.
any of those things. And I think that's what gets most people.
Yep. So true. Oh man, this is awesome. Thanks, brother. How can people get in and find you guys and connect with you and the work you're doing and what you have going on? Because you got all kinds of stuff going on.
We do. My Instagram's at Shawn VMD. I don't post a lot of stuff. Mine's more like messing around. But Jamie's, her stuff is out. She has some of the best content out there, especially for women and families and entrepreneurs. But hers is at jamie.villalovos, and Jamie spelled Jaime. Villalovos is what it sounds like. I'm just kidding. It's V like Victor,
It was like,
ILL. Yeah, ALOV like Victor, OS like Sam. So Jamie.Villalovos.
where's the
And
heritage of that, man? Where did that come
it's
from?
Mexican.
Okay.
Probably Spanish originally, like
Yeah.
most of those Mexican names. But yeah, my dad's family's from Mexico. That's a whole other story in itself. I always joke I'm the only Irish Mexican you're going to meet that doesn't drink.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, what
But
a cool heritage.
and then our website's happyandstrong.com. And that's my wife's book too, is Happy and Strong. A lot of this stuff we talk about, my wife talks about in that book, a lot of the balance stuff, a lot of the techniques and some of the things I'm talking about, communication things are in that book too.
Fantastic.
So that's a good one to get.
Yep. Love it. I'll put all those links in the bottom. Okay. Thanks, brother. Thanks for being here, man. Really appreciate it. This has been awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah. Love it.